Welcome to NervePinchMMA. I am your host, Sam, and behind the camera as always is my good man, Ralph. Today we're going to be talking about UFC 146, Dos Santos versus Mir. We're going to have two segments that we're going to break this fight down on. The first one's going to be against the odds, where I'm going to give you my picks of the main card fights that I think are good values to bet on. And we're going to have breaking it down, where I'm going to go into an in-depth analysis of all the fights on the main card and kind of give you my feel for how those fights are going to go. But first, let's recap the last two UFC events that have happened since our last episode. So since our first episode that we did, I had advised on 4 fights to bet on. I advised on betting on Belcher versus Paul Harris at a plus 220 underdog, and I had also advised on Nate Diaz over Jim Miller at a 180 underdog. Paul Harris lost by KO to Belcher. He looked great. Nate Diaz, he pretty much basically dominated Jim Miller from the very start. Did not look like an underdog at all. And those were 2 fights I advised on, and we clearly won both of them. So right now we're going to talk about UFC 146. I'm going to give you, we're going to talk about the 5 main event fights, all heavyweight fights, and I'm going to tell you which ones I feel are good values for us to bet on. So the first fight we're going to cover on the UFC 146 Dos Santos versus Mir card is Stephen Struve versus LeVar Johnson. LeVar Johnson coming in as a late replacement for Mark Hunt, who got injured a few days ago. As of this time, there is no betting line on this. The odds makers have not placed any lines for this. I don't know if it's because LeVar Johnson hasn't officially signed the fight or they just haven't determined what the official odds should be. So at this time, I can't recommend any bets. I do think Stephen Struve should be the favorite. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'll keep you updated on this. And if I feel that there's a good value here on Stephen Struve, I'll Twitter my predictions later on. So just follow me this week before UFC 146. So the next fight is Dave Herman versus Roy Nelson. Dave Herman's coming in at a plus 180 underdog, and Roy Nelson at minus 240. The play here is on Dave Herman. He's an underdog in this fight, but I think this is a very even matchup. I would say the good play is to go on Dave Herman. So the next fight on this one is Shane Del Rosario versus Stipe Miocic. When this line first came out, they were pretty even. I think Rosario was actually a slight favorite. Now the money has gone on Miocic. He is now the favorite in this fight. Rosario is an underdog. He's paying at plus 130, Miocic at minus 160. I would say the good money goes on Del Rosario. I would say he should be the favorite in this fight. I say bet on him. The next fight on this card is Cain Velasquez versus Antonio Silva. Velasquez is coming in at a huge favorite here at minus 380. Antonio Silva at plus 315. I think this accurately reflects how big of a favorite Cain Velasquez should be. I say no play on this bet. This is a fight to stay away from in terms of betting on. And in the main event of UFC 146, Dos Santos versus Frank Mir. Frank Mir coming in at a huge underdog, plus 415. Junior Dos Santos minus 525. Junior Dos Santos should be a heavy favorite in this. He knocks everyone he fights out. The only guy he hasn't is Roy Nelson. I say don't bet on this fight. He is a heavy favorite. There's really no reason to bet on this because we're looking for value, and this provides absolutely no value because your payoff is going to be like, 15% of what you bet on. So stay away. Welcome to this segment of Breaking It Down of UFC 146. We're going to review the 5 main card event fights on this. It's a heavyweight matchup. All 5 are heavyweights. There's been some shuffling on the card, but these are the 5 fights that are going to happen. First one we'll talk about is LeVar Johnson versus Stephen Struve. Now this is a classic matchup of one guy's strength is the other guy's weakness, and this guy's strength is the other guy's weakness. Steven Struve, very long reach, but doesn't use it effectively, but he's got great ground skills with his long legs and long arms. LeVar Johnson loves the slug, stands and bangs, can knock out anybody. Terrible on the ground. As we saw against Pat Barry made him look bad on the ground. And that should say something about LeVar Johnson. Now, Steven Struve's weakness, of course, is getting knocked out by hard hitters. So, like I said, this is a fight of two guys, strength versus weakness, strength versus weakness. Who's going to win? Now, right now, we don't have any betting odds on this one, but I like Steven Struve in this fight. He's a young guy. He's 24. Even though he's had some big losses in the UFC, he's 7-4, I believe, and I see growth in his game. And as long as he can survive the early storm that LeVar Johnson's going to give him, because he's going to come out and blitz him like he normally does, and if he can survive the first 3 or 4 minutes, I see him clearly winning this fight, taking it to the ground at some point, because eventually it'll get there. And when he gets there, it's over. He'll put some submission on him or just school him, because LeVar Johnson doesn't know how to get up off the ground, and he's been submitted. All his losses in his career have been by submission. In the next fight, we have Dave Herman versus Roy Nelson. I like this fight because we have an up-and-coming guy, Dave Herman, new to the UFC. This will be his 3rd fight, but he's been fighting in smaller shows for quite a while, versus Roy Nelson, who took a similar road to the UFC in that he fought in the IFL, Strikeforce, Affliction, I believe he fought for, and now he made it to the UFC. He's pretty much proven with his record that he beats the cans and he loses to the good guys, to the upper tier fighters. And right now we're not quite sure how good Dave Herman is. You know, I think he looked bad in his loss versus Steven Struve, and I think that's kind of tainted the way his prospect outlooks, because coming into the UFC, I thought he was one of the better prospects coming in, and after that loss, people kind of started looking down on him. But I think when you fight a guy as unusual as Steven Struve, you tend to, he can make people look bad because he has such a long reach. And I think Dave Herman is a better fighter than what he showed in that fight. And Roy Nelson, the guy can take a beating. I really think that Dave Herman will win this fight by decision. I'm not, I can't guarantee anything, but that's just the way I see this fight going. Neither guy is going to knock each other out, and this is probably going to go decision. Dave Herman is the favorite. And the next matchup we have is Stipe Miocic versus Shane Del Rosario. And I love this matchup. It's pretty rare that you'll see the UFC matchup two young up-and-coming fighters against each other this early in their UFC career. These are two guys that have a chance to, down the road, compete for the UFC heavyweight title. So to see them fight while they're still in the prime of their career, both undefeated, it's an exciting matchup. Stipe Miocic, of course, comes 2-0 in the UFC. Won both, I believe, one by knockout, one by brutal 3-round decision over Joey Beltran. I think it surprised a lot of people that Joey Beltran was able to stand for 3 rounds with him with the beating he took, but Miocic has looked very impressive in his 2 fights. Shane Del Rosario, of course, is from Strikeforce. He's 11-0, and he's looked great in his fights in Strikeforce and even his Show XC fights in Strikeforce. I do see Del Rosario, though, as being the more well-rounded fighter. Not to say that Miocic isn't, but we've seen everything from Del Rosario. He's beaten guys by submission. He's beaten them on the ground. He has a Muay Thai background, and I believe neither of these guys are giving up any type of quickness on each other or size. They're same age, same size, same weight, same speed, same pedigree of fighting. I think this is going to be a very competitive fight. The reason why I think Rosario is going to be, probably should be the favorite in this fight is that I think he has a more well-rounded game. He showed that he can take guys down and beat them there, and even if he gets taken down, he's shown great jiu-jitsu from the bottom for hip escapes, getting out of fights, and also submissions from the bottom. So just in terms of looking at it as ways guys can win, I think Del Rosario has more avenues to a win than Miocic does. And in the co-main event, we have Cain Velasquez versus Antonio Silva. Antonio Silva, of course, coming from Strikeforce and Elite XC. Cain Velasquez, the former UFC heavyweight champion before he lost by KO to Junior Dos Santos back in November. This is Antonio Silva's first fight in the UFC. He's a really big guy, slow, but he hits about as hard as anybody in the UFC heavyweight division. And Cain Velasquez, he's known for his incredible wrestling and his agility and speed and relentlessness. And I think that's the exact type of fighter that Antonio Silva struggles against. Guys that can outquick him, guys that can avoid his strikes, get inside of them, and just frustrate him. I think Cain will have trouble taking him down, but his relentlessness will eventually get him down. I think he'll get up in the clinch with him a whole bunch of times and just continue to wear Antonio Silva down. He's coming in as a heavy favorite in this fight. I completely agree with that. I don't see, I see Silva's only way of winning this is a puncher's chance, and it may be a bigger chance than I may be giving on to, because Cain did lose his last fight to Junior Dos Santos by KO. It didn't even look like that big of a punch, but it was one of those punches that, you know, I think it hit him on the side of the head right here. I think it was this side, and I think it just kind of knocked him off balance. I mean, we've seen he's got a tough chin. He took a lot of shots versus Czech Congo, didn't get knocked out, but that one punch versus Junior Dos Santos landed right here. I think caught him in the temple, just dazed him, and I don't think you should judge his ability to take a punch based on that one punch. It was Junior Dos Santos who 14-1, and he's like 7-0 in the UFC, all knockouts except for maybe 1 or 2. So I wouldn't put too much weight in the fact that he lost that fight. He also came into that fight after a long history or a long layoff because of injury. He might have been rusty going into that one. I see him coming back and just taking out Antonio Silva by KO or by decision. And in the main event, we have Junior Dos Santos versus Frank Mir. Now, Frank Mir is a replacement for Alistair Overeem. That was the dream fight everyone wanted to see. Alistair, who had knocked out by kick Brock Lesnar, kicked him out of the UFC basically, and people wanted to see this explosive heavyweight battle between two guys that were just going to knock each other silly. So it's kind of a letdown now that it's just going to be Junior Dos Santos versus Frank Mir. Frank Mir, of course, is a top 5 heavyweight for the last 5 or 6 years in the UFC. I do see Junior Dos Santos, though, as the heavy favorite, and I believe that should be the case. He basically destroys everyone who decides to stand with him. And I do see Frank Mir being arrogant enough to think he could stand there and trade with him. And his fight, the only way Frank Mir has of winning this fight is taking Junior Dos Santos down and submitting him. He's not going to win this by standing. He doesn't have great takedowns. When he submitted Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, he beat him because, you know, he actually lost the stand-up war. He was close to being knocked out, and Nogueira ended up trying to go for submission, rather than going for the KO, which he actually did versus Randy Couture, almost cost him that fight. And he did this again versus Frank Mir. Frank Mir reversed it, got the Kimura and broke Nogueira's arm. I don't look at that as when I look at Frank Mir's history of winning by submission, a lot of times when he does it, it's not because he took a guy down, got on top and submitted him. It's because there were scrambles that were created. And I don't see Junior Dos Santos allowing any type of scramble on this. No one's ever been able to take this guy down. I don't think Frank Mir is going to be the guy to do it. I see Junior Dos Santos eventually just wearing him out. Frank Mir is a tough guy. He did fight Shane Carwin, took a beating in that first round, and you know, Junior Dos Santos destroyed Shane Carwin over 3 rounds. I don't see Frank Mir having much of a chance in this fight. He's going to lose this by standing, most likely. Like I said, Junior Dos Santos, heavy favorite. I'd recommended not betting on this fight. So thank you for joining us for the second episode of Nerve Pinch MMA. You can follow me on Twitter, NervePinchMMA, and hopefully you'll join us for our next episode. Until next time, go pinch somebody.